There's a lot going on in today's dating world. People who are either dating or who are even actively in relationships, a lot of them are experiencing loneliness. Now, on the other hand, it has created this type of consumerism mentality when it comes to dating and relationships.
You mean, okay, if both of you want to find love and both of you really want to find that long-term committed relationship, what's happening? Why can't you just get together?
If we were aware of what kinds of challenging behaviors were accidentally pushing people away, we wouldn't do them.
Are we truly working on ourselves?
The major thing is that when you are dating and even in a relationship, that's a constant process. That doesn't stop when you find a partner. So if I'm dating a man and I'm like, oh, he has to be this height, why do I have that standard? Oh, because then I can feel better about myself. Well, why will I feel better about myself? That's when it comes back to me. Love is not a feeling, it's an action. What could I recommend working on in order to find a fulfilling or a wholesome or healthy relationship with someone else, with a romantic partner for 2025 is...
Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. It's exciting. I've been looking forward to this for a while. And as a dating and relationship coach, what is happening in today's dating world? How did we get here?
That's a great question. That's a really big question. And I think it depends on who you ask. There's a lot going on in today's dating world. And I know that one of the pieces of media that you had actually shared with me in reference to, here are some of the things that are going on. There's a lot of content about the challenges and the struggles that people are facing, and it's too many to list, I think. There's a lot of struggle, primarily, I think, with loneliness, and people who are either dating or who are even actively in relationships, a lot of them are experiencing loneliness. I see that there's also challenges going on with archetypes, or if you want to call them gender stereotypes, of men always do this or women always do that, or why don't men do more of this? Why can't women just understand that? So there's a lot of, I think, a rift or division between why does this group behave or act in this way? Why does that group behave or act in this way? I just can't wrap my head around it. If only they would change, then I would be able to connect with someone. Then I would be able to find someone. And so I see a lot of that division. And also a lot, too, of very common themes or stories that people who are dating are experiencing some pretty uncomfortable things or some pretty challenging things when they either go on dates or they meet people. And I've heard stories on both sides, right? So I've heard stories from men who are dating or from women who are dating who've had really challenging experiences, and some of them which are kind of mind-blowing. And so there's a lot going on, I think, in today's dating climate and culture, and especially the role that technology is playing with connection. And so a lot of the work that I do or have done has looked at connection and how do people connect and find community.
Yeah, you said a lot of interesting things there. One of them, which is true, the impact on social media, how it shapes our reality. And when we chatted after I sent you the piece of content that I'll read it later on, if you're exposed to that a lot, then that's your new reality. That's what you believe in. But another thing that you mentioned was stories from and experiences from other people. Mm. I think this is the part that I need sort of to understand because as I told you last time we spoke, I haven't dated since 2013. I was in a long-term relationship. I got divorced last year, and then I needed time to heal. I needed time to just grieve and working on my own stuff. But I was oblivious of what's happening. And when you start hearing, when I start seeing this content on social media, people using satire, people making fun of how challenging dating is. Like, okay, is this real, or is just a small percentage of population feeling this way? And start asking people around, it's like, no, it's a quite a big thing. What is happening? What do you think, based on some of the experience that people have shared with you from both men and women's side, what are men and women doing wrong in those first dates that leave them a bad taste of mouth after that, encounter, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that's very true is what you said about algorithms, right? Mm-hmm. When we're consuming content, whether it's on, no matter what the platform is, on various platforms that especially have video content, people recording videos about either satire or comedy, their experiences. And a lot of the time seeing those videos can be cathartic because you can see it and be like, oh, someone else gets me, or wow, someone else has experienced that. And the issue with that is, like you said, when we consume content, the application that we're using feeds us more similar content, because that way we spend more time viewing material created by different creators. Mm-hmm. And that can just be challenging because when we're only seeing things that align with my painful experiences dating or my challenges dating or my recent divorce or my recent breakup or a person lying to me, whatever it is, then we see more of that. And that becomes like, oh, look, a lot of people are experiencing this. Is that true? Yes, I think it is true that a lot of people do experience those things. And also, too, we're not necessarily being as exposed to content on different sides where it shows different perspectives of dating and different experiences of dating, including positive experiences or healthy experiences of dating. Now, that being said, your follow-up question was, what are each of those groups doing that they could be doing better when they either meet with each other or they go on a first date?
So you said that some of the people that have shared stories with you is like, okay, that's a horrible experience.
Yes.
And I don't know if the person that we're going out on a date with were aware of the things that they were doing wrong.
Great point. Oftentimes not.
So to me, it's like, okay, what exactly? Now, there is this new trend, what I see, women calling almost everything an ick. We can dive in later on. But I understand that some of them might be, okay, that is like probably too much of what you're doing, and men not being aware of that, as well as maybe women doing some other things that they're not aware of it, and then they turn the guy off or rub them the wrong way. So it's almost like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And if somebody keeps going on dates and having the same behavior, having the similar results, like, are you blaming other people, or you should start blaming yourself for the common denominator that is you, but without realizing that you might be doing something that is not right, I guess.
Right. So are people aware of the behaviors that are going on when they're dating or meeting people? Oftentimes, no. Because if we were aware of what kinds of challenging behaviors we're accidentally pushing people away, we wouldn't do them. What I think the underlying cause is that with the easy accessibility of being able to potentially match with or connect with people on different app or dating platforms, it has dramatically changed the way that people date. In one sense, it has been extremely, I think, helpful and positive for people to be able to connect in ways that they otherwise never had the opportunity to connect. Before having the accessibility to dating apps or internet or certain technology, you would only be able to connect or date with people who are within your immediate city or your immediate region. So maybe at work, in your school, your university, wherever you are, you had access to those people. Now, with the internet and with dating platforms and dating apps, we have access to people essentially across the globe. There is little to, if any, limitations to who you can connect with. You can connect with someone through sending a message on a platform, through connecting on a dating app, by configuring your dating settings on who you want to match with, what's your radius, if you will, or what's your location. You can even match with people who are outside of your geographic location. If you pay for premium or plus plans, you can match with people who are outside of your city. And that, on the one hand, helps, I think, in a certain way, address this issue of, well, I had felt loneliness, but now I see that there's so much connectivity because I can connect with people in this way if I'm interested in dating or romantically interested. Now, on the other hand, it has created this type of consumerism mentality when it comes to dating and relationships, where, and I've noticed this too, where just experiencing and observing, it's almost as if people have become a bit more of a commodity where, okay, if you're doing something that either offends me or displeases me, or maybe I don't really like that much or I don't align with, I will discard what we've done, what we've built, the past couple of dates we've gone on, and I can find someone else really quickly and really easily. So there's kind of this mentality where it's almost like churning a wheel. And it's a different mentality where if someone is doing something that doesn't align with what I think I should have or experience in a relationship, I will go ahead and put that to the side and I will move on. And so it's more of like this, especially in, let's say, in Western dating culture, United States-based dating culture, there's more of this almost blinders mentality of, well, when I'm focusing on me and my goals and my needs, if this person isn't aligning with me, I will put them to the side and I will move on with someone else who does, because there's so much accessibility with being able to connect with other people and go on different dates. So I've noticed that as an issue. But again, it comes with the pros of connectivity, but it also comes with the con of creating these very shallow interactions that make people more of a discardable commodity and not an actual human being that you're talking to.
You made a very, very interesting point there. And I think, based on what I've heard, because as I said, I was oblivious of what was happening out there, because I didn't know how messy it was, how hard it was for people to date nowadays and to find love and find, their person. But you're saying how everyone is so focused on their own goals and they're so self-absorbed, and then if you say something that offends me, or if you do something that doesn't really, it rubs me the wrong way, I'm just going to move on. I think people either have lost the ability or don't know how to date for a long-term relationship anymore. It's almost like unless they find the perfect piece for their puzzle that basically fits perfectly, or they have everything that they're looking for, then for them it's like, okay, no, I need to move on. I need to find the other person. And the other problem when you add the contradicting voices on social media that we see, the complete extremes, like black or white.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, I'm following this advice or following that advice, or then my perception is that all women are for the streets, or all guys are assholes, or guys don't want to do anything, or women are gold diggers. But at the same time, I'm trying to get my thing right, and I need to put my own boundaries, but that my boundaries mean that I don't have to compromise at all. Nobody wants to compromise. So to me, it's got to a point where people are not willing to put the work and to see the future that they can build with another person.
And I would agree with a lot of what you said. I think that it's something special and very beautiful to find when you can find a context or a situation where someone also is willing to do the work to compromise. I myself, years prior, had more of a mentality of, well, if it's work, then that must mean that the partner and I are doing something wrong, because this should be easy. This should really flow. We shouldn't have areas where we disagree. We should be agreeing on almost everything, essentially. But maturing into the mentality and the reality that actually when you put two separate human beings into one union or connection or relationship together, these are two separate human beings with decades of experience of their own life, their own goals, their own ambitions, their own career, their own family experiences, family of origin, culture. And when you put that together, you're going to have moments where you are not seeing eye to eye or where you disagree. Now, black and white is very complicated, though, because like you said, there's a lot of content or even teaching out there where it's either one extreme or the other, right? There's a lot on the one extreme of extremely individualistic, where it's saying, I shouldn't have to compromise. If I'm having to give up pieces of who I am and sacrifice parts of who I am, this is an unhealthy relationship. I shouldn't change who I am for someone else who should love me and accept me as I am. So that's one extreme. On the other extreme, it's I will give up anything or all to keep this relationship. I don't care what I have to sacrifice. If I have to change these things about myself, sure, as long as I get to keep this relationship because I love this person. These are two extremes. I think that a lot of perception paints it like you're either in this extreme or that extreme. And for me, I think both of those extremes are extremely unhealthy, are not ideal, are not balanced. If I'm in this extreme, I'm only focusing on myself, and any inconvenience that comes from that other person, again, I can discard them and be like, you know what, this relationship is just not working for me. I have my own goals. Like, sorry, you're kind of getting in the way of that. That's the one hand. The other hand is, well, I have no sense of identity, so I will do literally anything to keep this relationship. If the person has needs, I can meet them. I can change who I am. I don't need to advocate for myself because I just want to keep the relationship. Also not healthy. So it's about neither of those. And it's about essentially saying, how do I compromise where I get to also be in a healthy relationship with someone who advocates for me and who I advocate for them. And it's not these black or white extremes where I'm choosing one camp or the other, which I think we see a lot of material around that. Now it's really challenging to explain that middle space and that gray space where you're not so self-centered or self-focused that you're accidentally pushing away your connection because, and I'm speaking from experience because I have been more in that camp before where I had been taught that, well, if I have to make compromises, that's unhealthy. But I've also experienced the other extreme where I've lost my sense of self or identity in a relationship because I was so concerned with, well, I just want to keep this connection. So I know what both of those feel like. And transitioning into that middle space, which is often less talked about. Like you said, there's a lot on both, but it's less talked about, it's quite a uphill. It's quite a different approach, and it can feel really hard because you're finding this new space where you're having that healthy balance and that healthy relationship.
I think you perfectly described, even though we were talking about content on social media, you perfectly described the avoidant and anxious attachment right there. Avoidance, like I'm not willing to sacrifice anything, my freedom, my any of my time, and the other one's like I'm giving you everything. I just want to keep this relationship alive, which again it happens a lot, and sadly those two people tend to get together and be in that vicious cycle of that toxic relationship until one of them realizes, okay, this is not working for me. But I did love what you said about what you thought relationship and love should look like or feel like. If I have to put work, then it's not meant to happen. And I do believe that the biggest issue with people or society is like, one, people feel that love should be enough, and love is never enough because you need work. But then I think people associate the word work with their annoying 9 to 5, the misery of 9 to 5. But also working on your hobbies is work. Doing something that you love is work, right? If you reframe that concept of what work means, then you say, oh yeah, I mean, I can work on this relationship. It doesn't need to feel like this misery. I can do things that are healthy, and I'm excited about it, because a lot of people, even as entrepreneurs, will just work tons of hours, 60, 80 hours, but they're excited about it. Yeah. Look at it as a relationship as well. You're excited. You're putting a ton of work, effort, and you'll have to face some growing pains at some point, especially when you move in together. It's just like, okay, we will have to understand each other. And again, to me, part of the biggest problem that I see nowadays, and I want to know your opinion about this, is that you have people on both sides, men and women. It's like, I can't find anybody. I really want to find love. And then to me, it's like, okay, if both of you want to find love and both of you really want to find that long-term committed relationship, what's happening? Why can't you just get together? And I do believe, at least my impression, right, that most people haven't done the inner work. Most people haven't emotionally healed. In what sense? Is whenever you have a friend, family member, coworker that has, after a breakup, after a divorce, most of them will tell you, I'm working on myself right now, which is like a perfect thing to say. And to me, sometimes I wonder, are you truly working on yourself? Because if even 70% of those people had been working on themselves, by the time they go out there, they have like a healthier way of dealing with things. And funny because we hear this expression that time heals it all. Time is a healer. And I go, it's like, whoa, time doesn't really heal anything. Time will numb you from that pain. So me, after going through a painful divorce, it's just like, you have to, if you don't use that time to really, work on your boundaries and to understand and to figure out what mistakes you made, if you don't focus on that, then you'll repeat the same mistakes and the same cycle, just with a different person, right? And I feel that a lot of people distract themselves to not feel the pain, whether porn, social media, weed, alcohol, anything, right? And then ignoring that core issue. When you're not working on your boundaries, when you're not working on things that'll be working for you next time, then you're just sitting there letting time pass, and just because you know that at some point you're not going to be as hurt.
Yeah.
And the problem is when you don't have those hard conversations with yourself and then start taking responsibility for attracting that person to begin with, then the problem is just you repeat this. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. And then, well, I don't understand why I keep attracting the same type of person, or I don't understand why people keep stepping on me. It's like, are we truly working on ourselves?
Everything you said, that's really deep. It resonates so much in the sense that you're pinpointing the core issues of, okay, let's say I went through this painful experience, a divorce, a breakup after a long-term relationship. I say I'm working on myself. What am I actually doing? And also, too, the other thing that you said that I really appreciate is you talked about cycles and how we repeat cycles. The fact that you identify that already is, I don't know if you know how astronomically huge, that's massive, how huge that is. Identifying and understanding patterns, I think, is the first step to what we can loosely call or just broadly call freedom. Freedom essentially meaning I have the freedom or the ability to choose my responses because I'm not accidentally or subconsciously repeating the same patterns. When I accidentally and subconsciously repeat the same patterns, it's essentially as if I'm not free because I'm kind of in this cycle where I keep on accidentally making the same mistakes and I'm not understanding why. So that's a huge part first I want to just say about what you talked about, cycles and patterns. The second part is working on myself. Now, I like how you said when someone breaks up or maybe has a falling out or divorce, they say, let me work on myself. The major thing is that when you are dating and even in a relationship, that's a constant process. That doesn't stop when you find a partner. I see the healthiest relationships being with two people that are continually working on themselves throughout the relationship, throughout the dating process, and even checking in with each other about what they've been working on, about what they've been learning and growing. And so I think that an issue is that when two people are interested in dating, they're coming from this place of, I want to fill a lack or a need or a want. It's not in any way negative to have a want or desire for companionship. I think it's a very inherent thing that people are desiring companionship. And I myself too have had a very strong desire for companionship. So I in no way talk about or say, oh, get rid of your desire for companionship. I don't even know how to do that, honestly. I have a desire for companionship. Now, however, it's just coming at it from this approach of, well, this person then will fill my needs and fulfill my needs. That's a different approach than coming at it from this perspective of, it's not about the other person filling or fulfilling my needs or meeting my needs, because then if they don't, again, I can discard that and move on. Because if I match with this person and I see that they're not fulfilling or meeting certain needs, it's very easy for me to say, look, you know what? Relationship's not working for me. I'm going to walk away. So that's one perspective of how am I entering this relationship? Am I entering this relationship with, I have so much to give and I have so much that I want to give and that I want to share with this person and I want to see us growing together and I can see us growing together and I see us evolving or working on ourselves together. And that's one perspective versus you need to fill my needs or meet my needs because I need these specific things and I'm not okay in this specific way. So unless you fit this mold, quite frankly, you're more of a burden to me than a benefit. And you'll be more of maybe like a not positive impact. So I can discard that relationship and move on. So that's the more commodity-based relationship mentality that I see. And then the other thing is about cycles. So cycles are something that we end up, like you said, playing out with the anxious and the avoidant or the anxious avoidant or disordered attachment. When you see that people are getting stuck in these cycles or accidentally caught in these cycles, they tend to attract, like you said, maybe that opposite extreme, or they tend to attract someone who plays into their pattern or their patterns and vice versa. Getting caught in those cycles is extremely difficult because most of the time it's subconscious. You don't realize it. And then another thing is, I think that there's a common confusion in our culture between love and passion. You can experience passion for many things and for many people, but love is something that is very different. I think we use the two words interchangeably, like, oh, I love this thing or I love this person. We use love very, very easily, very openly, like I love ice cream or I love doing this hobby or I just, I'm dating this person, we're in love. And so I think it's important to distinguish between love and passion. Passion can be an initial desire to know more about this person that you're getting to know. It can be an initial physical attraction, mental attraction, emotional attraction that you feel towards someone. And it's a very important component to eventually having a long-term relationship, but it's not the only component. And so what I've been learning recently is that love is distinct and it's separate. Love is not a feeling, it's an action. So love as an action includes all these other things that passion doesn't necessarily include. And when I first started learning about the brain chemistry differences between love and passion, it rocked my world. It blew my mind because I was confusing the two. And I thought that unless I felt these specific things that are the definition of passion, I was like, well, there's no love. I'm not in love with that person. Versus seeing how love is something that you take time to build over time. But with that commodity, I'll easily discard my relationship type of cycle that I see a lot of people stuck in. There literally is no time to build a foundation for love because you're so quickly moving on or transitioning out of that relationship as soon as those feelings of passion wane. And so I see a lot of that too, passion declining and then people saying, okay, I guess we just fell out of love.
I don't want to sound repetitive on this podcast, but in the last few episodes, I've been obsessed with concepts and terms, right? And when you describe love and passion, I think people sort of understand or think they understand and they know what these concepts mean. But most of them, they don't truly know, right? So I like to deconstruct concepts by finding behaviors that are associated with this. I've had what I've realized, like, I've done with it. I've done it with self-awareness. I've done it with procrastination. I've done it with mindfulness. I've done it with several things that, to me, even a few episodes ago with narcissism, it's like I need to understand. I want to understand, and I want to help people to understand what the difference is. In this case, love and passion. I think that a lot of people feel that passion is what they need to feel, as you said, the sparks, but that is just what feels familiar. That is even a lot of people with anxious attachment will have they would confuse the feelings of joy and suffering, of the hot and cold, the push and pull with love and passion, and they say, okay, this is my person, this is how I'm supposed to feel, that anxiety, but then that fear, but then also have this joy that the person finally texts me back, or just we had a great date, or then he said something nice, or she said something nice to me. The way that I've always felt about love and passion is like, if my nervous system's regulated, if I'm relaxed with a person, okay, this is probably my person, right? The moment I feel like a lot of anxiety, it's like, man, I don't have the emotional stamina just to keep up with this. And it seems to me from both sides, if they don't feel those sparks, then they feel there's not chemistry or connection. And instead of they feel, if I feel that I'm okay with you, just I don't feel anything, then we're not the right one. Why do you think that is happening a lot? And what people should do about it?
Amazing questions. Because of our brains and our brain chemistry. And so there's something called love addiction. In psychology, there's love addiction, and there's also a term called serial monogamy. Have you heard of that term?
No.
Okay. So serial monogamy, and it might be some of what we see in dating culture now. Serial monogamy is essentially where a person gets accidentally stuck in this pattern or this cycle which might not be the case for you, because I do know you were in a long-term relationship, and for other people too, it doesn't apply. But it ends up being this concept where someone gets into dating and they feel those really enjoyable and really just wonderful feelings of when you first start getting to know someone. It's almost like a high of, I feel very excited, I feel very elated, like you said. I feel so happy that person reached out to me or texted me back or scheduled our next date. There's a lot of novelty to that, and there's a lot of those exciting feelings that kind of flood your body and flood your brain. It's actually comparable to your brain, right, going through a cycle of just like the spike of those feel good feelings or those feel good hormones. We get a really nice hit from that, a really nice spike from that. When there's a bit more of that developed familiarity, like you said, where it's more of like, okay, I have a rapport with this person, we've been dating for a while now, we know each other well, that can decline or drop because there's not as much of that novelty or that what's going to happen next, or that kind of tension of, is this really going to work out? You know, do they want me? Are they interested in me? That kind of creates this sort of almost like alluring feeling of like, I'm just really drawn into this. I'm really drawn into this. When that decreases, you see sometimes a lot of people saying, okay, well, the passion's gone now. Right? The passion's gone. I don't know, like the je ne sais quoi that we had at the beginning of our relationship, it's just gone. And a lot of people interpret that as, I must have fallen out of love with this person because we just don't have the same spark, the same chemistry, the same level of intimacy, the same level of connection that we had before. That is when it turns into serial monogamy, is when essentially the person says, okay, and they exit that relationship and they jump into the next relationship, next one that brings them those good feelings again. And so those relationships might last anywhere from like 6 months to 18 months because that's the period of time in which those two people are getting to know each other. So serial monogamy is like shorter relationships. So little spurts of like a 3-month relationship here, a 6-month relationship here, a 12-month relationship here. And the person accidentally cycles through those relationships because once those feelings diminish, it's that sensation of, oh, I guess it's just not my person, because, you know, the feelings are gone. I don't know what happened. This might not be my person. And then they transition into the next relationship. That doesn't necessarily apply for someone who's been in a longer term relationship like yourself as well, like you had said. Now, the thing with passion and with love, to deconstruct it more, is that passion is more of like a physical or visceral feeling. Passion is what can cause you to feel attracted to someone you literally don't know and you've never met in your life, or you've only seen or interacted with very briefly. You can't feel love for that person because you don't know who that person is. You can't feel love for that person because you haven't experienced challenges and trials together. You can't feel love for that person because you haven't built a foundation upon which you both are growing and evolving together. You can feel interest, you can feel curiosity, you can feel mystery and allure, you can feel intimate or sexual attraction to that person, but none of that is the same as love. But you can definitely feel drawn to that person, like, wow, I just really want to talk to this person. I love talking to this person. I want to know more about them. That can be drawn into, and that can eventually evolve and transform into love. But it's not the same concept, essentially. And so serial monogamy is one thing. And another is really just going off of, because you were asking, you know, how do we really work through those feelings? Like what is passion and what is love? Love is essentially a bit different because it's more of a depth. So passion is more of that initial spark and that initial interest, and love has more of that depth to it. Like, we've been through some stuff together, right? This person's got my back. This person is trustworthy. This person is someone that I can build a foundation with. This person is someone that I have rapport with. It goes deeper. There's just so much more of that depth where passion is more of on the surface level, and anyone can feel passion for anyone else who's kind and friendly and attractive and maybe flirty. And the other thing too was, I'll pause there because
no.
If there's anything that you want to follow up on.
No. One of the things you said about those people who basically go through 3 months, 6 months, 18 months, maybe less in a relationship, and they're just looking for that. I think they're looking for the dopamine hit instead of the oxytocin type of thing, because oxytocin would be, because if you feel, I think when you feel bonded to the person, that's when you truly start feeling love, rather than the excitement. The excitement would be the dopamine. And see, here's the thing. I don't really know if this has been an issue in for the last 30 years or just recently in the last 5 to 10. And I do kind of blame a lot the dating apps. I understand where you're coming from. Said, hey, it allows you to expand your circle. It allows you, if you're somebody who works hard and just go from work to the gym and back, right? You might not have enough chance to meet new people. And from that point of view, makes a ton of sense. Like, it helps you finding somebody that probably lives like 3 blocks away from you and you would have never encountered. Awesome. But I think it conditions a lot of people having that mindset of, man, I have so many different options, so many different opportunities. And people are so afraid of making the wrong choice. They want to maximize. Like, I want everything. In fact, there was a study that they asked women that if they were going to be satisfied with a man that had 80% of everything that they were looking for, I said no. 2/3 said no, I want everything. And then they asked the same thing to guys, and they say 2/3 say yes, that would be amazing, that would be great. And I'm not saying that you don't deserve everything you're looking for, but the chance of you getting it is like very unlikely, especially when you have unrealistic expectations. But I think the dating apps have created this monster in people's minds that they have to. And I've talked to quite a few of my female friends who were single in the past, who are single now, trying to understand, okay, I understand from the guy's point of view. Can you please explain to me what you have experienced? And most of them have said people have a hard time committing, right? We go out for 2 months, 3 months, and then like nothing. And to me has been, okay, actually, I'm so happy with my friend that I remember a story. I was like, wait, I finally
Tell me.
Yeah, this connection. So I was on YouTube early this week watching a podcast with Simon Sinek and Trevor Noah. Simon was telling a story about this shoe salesman in the 50s in LA. He basically had several stores that he sold women's shoes, and a journalist asked him, hey, what's your secret? And he said 2, not 3. And he said, well, what do you mean by that? When a woman comes to my store, I show them a pair of shoes. And then she comes and says to me, hey, can I see that pair of shoe? And I bring her the second pair of shoes. And then she says to me, how can I also see that pair of shoe? And I will ask her, sure, which one do you want me to take away? Right? Because I've realized that if they have 3 or more options, they won't buy any. If they have 2, they will buy 1. If you put it, we get overwhelmed. We want to, it's like, I want everything, but then if I have so many different options, like, it's hard for me to choose because there's always going to be better. And this is with shoes. It's not even high ticket items like a car or a house.
Right.
And we're doing that with people.
Yes.
It's just like, no wonder why it's so hard, because I've never downloaded any dating apps. I'm not planning to, but I can see how both men and women have hard time committing because the loss aversion, right? This person might have 80% of what I want, but doesn't have the 100%. And the moment I see somebody with that 20% left, I'm not going to commit to this one. I'm going to go to that one. And then I will find out that person only had that 20%. That person didn't have the 100%.
They're missing it, yeah.
So we're focusing on what we're lacking rather than what we have.
And I completely agree with you. And that goes back to what I said at the very beginning, where I was like, there are pros and there are also cons. Now, this gets challenging because every person has their own unique experiences. And so I can only speak to mine. You can only speak to yours. I resonate with yours. I resonate with your experiences. And on the other hand, I also know people who have gotten into serious relationships and who actually are married, but who met through a dating app or who met through some kind of a dating or matching website, whatever it was. Not to name any specifically on here, but who ended up being in a long-term relationship and who actually are now married as a result of meeting through a dating app. So I've seen those situations of couples that I know who are still married to this day because they met through some kind of a platform or some kind of an app. And I think that's wonderful. However, I love that. I love that for them. And I love that for everyone who's met in those ways, like you said, because when someone's struggling because they go to work and then they go to the gym and they go home and then they sleep, wake up, right? It's hard to get out of those cycles of how do I meet new people. And I know people who are in that situation where it's been very beneficial to them. That being said, it also creates that mentality, like you said, where I've heard it said as well, too, from different marriage and family therapists and also from different psychologists, where there's the 80-20 rule, which you already know about. The 80-20 principle is, does this individual have 80% of the qualities that to me are just core and fundamental and extremely important? Whereas there's 20% where it's just kind of, it's just stuff that maybe I didn't expect, stuff that I don't align with, stuff that I maybe just don't really agree with. But 80% of that is there. Right? They have 80%, which when you think about it is quite a lot. It's a good amount. It's a good percentage. 80-20 is something that I've heard used often with people who are working in the area of relationship or therapy or marital counseling. That being said, if someone's stuck in this mentality of, no, it has to be 100 or 95, it's like, well, I don't quite know where you're going to find that. Could you find that maybe in some type of extremely exceptional situation or extremely rare situation, but are you putting yourself in such a box that you then are limiting or prohibiting all other forms of potential connection or relationship? Absolutely. Because you have it fixed in your mind of, this person must be this height, this stature, this job, this title, this salary, right? And especially like you were saying with women having these certain checks, I've seen that a lot on both sides. For men, it tends to be things relating to maybe unrealistic expectations about what that woman will look like physically, or what that woman will do in terms of like typical or archetypal feminine expectations that they would have. For women, it can sometimes be even more intense, where it's like, well, the man has to be this height and has to make this amount of money and has to have these certain types of qualities and characteristics. And in addition to all those things, he also has to be empathetic and compassionate and listen to me. So they're wanting these masculine qualities and characteristics of, I want to feel cared for, provided for, loved. And also I want the person to be emotionally intelligent, and which of course is a wonderful thing to want from a relationship. But also he has to have all these other things and like be personal development, and has to be in therapy, and like he has to do all these things. And you look at that and you're like, okay, that's a lot. And I understand that these things are important, right? And that puts a lot of pressure on men, just like men too would be like, oh, she has to have this type of waist size or this type of hair type or this type of style, or she has to look like this, or she has to cook like my mom. And it's just like, okay, there are all these expectations too, where when you look at that, it's like, okay. A lot of these things are really excellent expectations to have, because you want your partner to be loving, be emotionally intelligent, be compassionate, be empathetic, be self-aware, be motivated, right? But the way that you describe that and list that, again, that can impact how satisfied I feel with the person I'm currently with. So I would recommend what I've learned in readings that I've done from people who are working on this type of work is what are the top 3 to 4. Don't have more than 3 to 4. For example, like things that are qualities or characteristics where it's like, these are my values and I have someone whose values align with mine. And so one thing that I've heard is core 4 values. What are your core 4 personal values? And do you align with the other person's core 4? But then also too, like what are the top fundamental things that, for example, let's say I want a man who's emotionally intelligent. He's in therapy. He takes care of his mind, his emotional health. He takes care of himself physically. He does all these things. Okay, how can I condense that into one word? Growth oriented. Right. And so I can take all of that and put that in a bucket and be like, I'm going to be with a partner who's growth oriented, who works on personal development, who's growth oriented. But then I don't have to list out, okay, here's exactly how he does that. He goes to therapy twice a week and he does this and he does that. Because maybe that's not the case. Maybe I meet someone who's growth oriented who does some slightly different things, but he's still growth oriented and he's still on that trajectory. Let's say a man's dating a woman and he's like, I want someone who looks like this and that and this and that and takes care of herself like this and that. And he has all these qualifications of she must look like this or whatever the specific like specificity is. Let's just say how can I condense all of that into one word? Okay, I want someone who is self-loving or who invests in herself. Whether that means she gets a manicure every 3 weeks or it doesn't matter if she gets it every 3 weeks or every 2 months, whatever it is, like someone who invests in herself and her health and who cares about herself and her health. And so she does certain things because she takes care of herself or she takes care of her health or her presentation, but I'm not listing exactly how she does that. Right. So I can see these general qualities. Does this person care about themselves in the ways that they present themselves? Or is this person maybe coming off as lackadaisical or, not necessarily investing as much, or versus this man, okay, does this man care about his growth and invest in his growth, or is he coming off as complacent or like, oh, therapy, I don't do that, like closed mindset. You can very easily identify those characteristics once you boil it down to those core words versus being like, he has to be 5'12" or 5'12" would be 6 feet.
Yeah.
5'11".
Which that's what they're looking for.
5'11", right? Yeah. Like he has to be this way, this thing. Why do I want those specifications? I want those specifications because I think that once I get that, it'll make me feel better. So if I'm dating a man and I'm like, oh, he has to be this height. Why do I have that standard? Oh, because then I can feel better about myself. Well, why will I feel better about myself? That's when it comes back to me, right? Mm-hmm. Why do I expect that? Oh, well, because then I'll feel X, Y, or Z. Okay, well, what would that really bring me? And so then it comes back to that self-work and that man too. Like, oh, I want a pretty woman like who does this, and that. Well, why? Okay, well, then I'll feel better about myself. Okay, why? What will that beautiful woman bring you? Oh, X, Y, Z. Right? What do you really want? In the end, is it to feel protected, nurtured, cared for, loved, accepted, seen? Right? Do you feel seen in that relationship? And that's what I think the biggest cause of loneliness is not, oh, I don't have people around me. It's just, oh, I don't feel seen. I don't feel like this person really sees me in my heart. I feel like they want certain things from me, but they don't truly see who I am. So how can I find and build that relationship with someone where I am seen for who I am and I see them for who they are, not for all these check boxes that I want them to be?
We are, most people, I feel, they're controlled or led by ego. That's what it just basically describes. Like, I want all of this because it's going to make me feel better about myself. Yes. I was able to pull this guy. I was able to pull this girl, right? It's just, hey, look at me. It's almost like I was talking to a good friend of mine, and then I asked her what she was looking for. I would say, hey, I'm going to help you to gain clarity exactly, because to me, the more clear you are, the better you'll do, I guess. And Josephine, she's 5'3". Josephine. And then she said, I want a guy who's like, I said, how about height? To me, just to understand. And she's like, I want somebody who's like at least 6'3". I was like, bro, you are 5'3". With 5'8" is fine. And she's like, but I want that person to be taller than most people. I was like, okay, that is ego driven, right? How would that help you? Now, I understand that from an evolutionary standpoint, we want the best genes, right, for our offsprings. I get it. Mm-hmm. Now, we might not consciously think about this, but I do believe that a lot of people go attractions. When they're attracted to somebody, I think one thing I like to ask myself is this desire or intuition? Because we can confuse, both of them, right? To me, I'm trying to focus more on my intuition to know what's right for me. But a lot of people can be led by desire. It's almost like how fun that will be, or they don't consider the other stuff. And as you said, having that breakdown of okay, what are my core values? What am I looking for? Because you can be somebody who is 6 foot tall, who makes a ton of money, whatever, but he's a piece of crap and he doesn't treat you right. Oh, right. Yes. And then you can be with a hot girl, whatever, that is extremely toxic, that is a drama queen, and then you're not going to be happy either. Yeah, you might be happy on pictures. I mean, on pictures like, oh, look at this girl, or look the kind of life that this guy is giving me. But inside the relationship, you're miserable. So it's like, I'm not saying date somebody broke. I'm not saying to date somebody ugly, but it's just finding that balance and being okay with, hey, I'm not going to listen to my ego now. I'm just going to try to go with my core values. But I need to first identify what those core values are in me, which most people I think tend to ignore. And one thing I will say, because we touch about the dating apps and how it's hard for us we see a lot. It's like one of the biggest issues, and that's I've talked to quite a few friends about. It's like I'll die on. It's like dating multiple people at the same time takes intentionality out of dating.
Oh yes, I saw your video on that. You made one.
And to me, it was like, I don't understand. To me, it doesn't make any sense. But here's the thing, though. I've talked to two of my female friends who are single, and they said, I date only one person at a time, but I feel that I should date multiple because because I need to assume that the guy is dating multiple people. So yeah, if we start doing what everyone else is doing, we're getting the same results that everyone is getting to begin with. So I don't know how people can change that mindset of, hey, it's okay you date one person, because to me it goes back to the story about the shoe salesman. When you have too many options, then you're like, okay, but I don't know what to choose. And then by the time you choose the person that you think is right for you, the person who was right for you in the past is no longer available, and then you end up settling for someone who doesn't align with your values.
There you go. And I think, again, what you said resonates a lot with me and with my own experiences too. One thing that I can say is that for me personally, every successful or long-term relationship that I've had has been through people that I've met organically, not in any way involving social media. What that means is that it's been with people that I've met through common, whether it's hobbies or activities or places that I would go or things that I had in common with that person, or even through events or workshops that I was giving. Like, I would meet people through these situations. And so had I used dating apps? Yes, I had. I think that they started to come out like right around the time that I was about to graduate from university. And so I think myself being one of the first like wave of people who's like, oh, interesting, let's go ahead and try this thing out. But then like myself, like you explained as well too, I was in long-term relationships for 5 years. And so I was completely plugged off offline. And coming back after that in 2022 was when I had found myself again, not in a relationship. And I was like, well, what in the world do I do? Because, oh my goodness, I have been so out of it since 2017, I think. So from 2017 to 2022, I don't think I had any kind of like use of those types of connecting platforms or apps. And so it was this whole kind of situation where I was like, well, it has worked for some people, so like, why don't I go ahead and give it a try? But then also too, when you talk to people and you hear about their experiences, you hear some pretty intense or sad or just really hard things that people have gone through. And there also are the opposite extremes, like I said, of people who I know who are now married, who met through dating apps. And you have the whole gamut of experiences. For myself, I have found that I have connected best with people when we've met through organic ways. And we've met, whether it's literally at a furniture store or at like a workshop or a communication event or something like that, where it's like we have common values. Because this is a person who's also interested in growth, or who's also interested in bettering their communication, or who's also, because we're going to the similar types of activities, we're going to similar types of things, we have common values. Having those core values in place doesn't mean, like I used to think, again, that you'll both be exactly the same or you'll both agree on all the same things, but you have a same common or collective goal where it's essentially we grow together and we grow ourselves as individuals, and then we grow and support each other in our own growth and in our relationships growth. It's that commitment. Like you said, there's a lot of fear of commitment, like having too many options. The 2 shoes versus 3 pairs of shoes to choose from. Is there going to be a purchase when there's 2 options or 3? And there's selection overwhelm, where when we have a certain number of options, once it surpasses, think about it when you're buying jam, for goodness sake. When you go to the grocery store to buy jam, there's not only probably 5 or 6 or 7 different brands of jam, but in each of those brands, there's probably 5 to 8 different flavors, where when I go there to the grocery store, I kind of stare at that and I'm just like, what in the world? And I could take 6 or 7 or 8 minutes to pick a jar of jam, because I'm just like, oh, which one has the best ingredient? And I'm like looking through, I'm like, organic, low sugar. And I'm trying to find, because there's so many options and it can be very extremely difficult. And then when you choose one, you're like, oh, I should have gotten the other one, right? Because you're like, yeah, the other one was like 50 cents off. And then you're like, well, can I get a coupon for that one? And so it's funny to use it for an example like shoes or jam or something silly, right? Because it's a silly little $7 purchase, or for shoes, it's like a lower cost purchase. But we're talking about people here, right? Like you said. And so these aren't commodities or just disposable objects. We're talking about human beings with emotions and feelings who have valuable experiences just like us ourselves. Now, I think there definitely is that kind of selection overwhelm, where when I have so much easy access to so many options, and especially let's say I'm like a highly sought after man, or I'm a man who's dating and I just happen to be, an attractive guy, or I'm really tall, or I have a really nice job, or I fit these stereotypes that causes me to get a lot of attention from women. I have my pick. I can pick whoever I want, essentially. Let's say I'm a very attractive woman who fits all these feminine stereotypes, who gets a lot of attention from men. I get my pick of the selection, where I'm just like, okay, I can pick what I want. It's almost giving like more leverage or power to people who are in these very archetypal situations where they have more of that attraction and they're receiving a lot of that attraction from people. And so it puts people in these very compromising situations where it's like, well, you have so much power to essentially swipe or choose or knock somebody down, not meaning to, but it's a lot of ability to just like move on from a person or move past it. And it's a lot of fear of missing out, I think, too. I think there's a lot of fear of missing out, like you said, for your friends who are single, where it's like, well, I can date multiple people at the same time, because then that way I know I'm not missing out on something better. I know I'm not missing out on maybe that person who has 1% more of what I'm looking for. This guy, he's great. He has like 83%, but there could be someone who has 85, and that person's probably out there somewhere. So if I'm just a little bit more patient, I guess I'll find that. Now, there's also that danger, too, of the opposite extreme, where it's settling, where it's like, this person has like 50 or 60% of what I'm looking for. They align with maybe 1 or 2 of my core values, but I don't want to be alone. Let me go ahead and pursue a relationship with this person, because then I won't be alone anymore. And goodness, I'm so tired of being alone. And so there's the opposite extreme of settling. And then there's this other hand. On the other hand, you have this extreme of, I will get what I want. And so I'm not settling until I get at least to 95% of what I'm looking for. And both of those extremes I don't think are helpful. They're 2 opposite extremes, and I don't see any of them being helpful. But I see a lot of people getting stuck in either one or the other, of settling and resigning and being like, you know what, it's better than nothing. At least I'm not lonely. I can finally start building my future. And for a lot of women, it's like, oh, I can finally start having a family, right? I need to eventually settle down with someone. I want to have children. I'm in my 30s or whatever it is. And then for a lot of other people, it's that opposite extreme of just continuing to go through and cycle through relationships because you can't find what you want.
Yep. That biological clock for women is very, very tricky, because the problem is just it raises the chances of that person to settle because of the desire or even out of desperation of having kids before her time passed, right? So I have a lot of empathy for women in that regard, because I'm happy I'm not one of them, because it would be a lot of it would be very, very, very stressful. But I understand that. And for guys, if you are, as you said, successful, have money, tall, or whatever, you have no incentive to settle down, no incentive whatsoever. It's like, hey, right, I'm having all the fun I want. And then the problem is, because we're trying to maximize, probably 8 out of 10 women will just chase that guy. It's like 80% will chase that 10% of men who have everything. And then you're leaving a lot of good guys who are probably to your standards okay, but it's like, I want that. And then by the time you're ready to say, okay, I can't get that guy, I need to go and find someone better. Here's the probably issue that you might not be settling per se, but what your 80% look like might be 100% of somebody else. If I have extremely unrealistic expectation, okay, I'm going to tone it down quite a bit. And still, that 80% is probably 120, 130 of somebody else, because you basically created this unrealistic person, somebody who is a fictional character that you're probably never going to find. But what you said about meeting people organically, this is another hill I died on. It's like, to me, friends before lovers create the best relationships. When you establish a friendship first, and then you get to know the person on a friends group, and then, you know what, let me explore this. The chances of that relationship to work for on a long period of time has like higher chances rather than if you're lover first and then you become friends, because you're going to hit struggles, but then you already know the person, and then you know what the person's values are, how to treat that person, how to make things work easier in that regard. And I think we're looking for the opposite. We're looking like, okay, if I'm attracted to somebody, I'm just going to get to know her while we're trying to explore being lovers, and then we'll develop that deep friendship. So again, in my case, I've always been friends with women in my life first, and then I've established a relationship, and that worked perfectly. In fact, I'm friends. I still have like a healthy friendship with my exes, even with my ex-wife, even though that divorce was painful. But it's just because the friendship was already there, and I feel that I don't know how people can create this awareness, I guess, of a lot of things that we talk about here, because we talk a lot about many different things that if people start working on them, they could have a better chance of finding their person, or if they find the person, they have a better chance of sustaining that relationship. Because what I've seen to realize, what it seems to me now is like things like situationships are lasting longer than actual relationships. It's just like that toxic. So to me, I guess as a closing question, what I would love to ask you is like, what advice you could give people, for both men and women, if it's different from each one of them, would be great as well, for them to have a better chance of things they should work on in order for them to find love in 2025, or even find their person?
That's a really great question. Absolutely. And I resonate with what you said too about situationships versus relationships, and what could I recommend working on in order to find a fulfilling or a wholesome or healthy relationship with someone else, with a romantic partner for 2025, is starting with understanding first what I bring to the table. I've seen in a lot of cases, oftentimes with women, where they are not necessarily, they're able to give a list of, here's all the things that I want from my partner, from my man. And then when the question's turned on, what are you bringing to the table? It's almost like, well, me, myself. And it's like, great. Okay. What are you bringing to the table though? Because you want all these things from your partner. What are you willing to provide and give? And like, how are you showing up for that person in these tangible ways that you can physically write down, like, here's all that I have to offer. And vice versa too, like for some men too who want certain things, where when the questions turn, where it's like, are you also willing to bring that to the table? The person's kind of like, oh, I have to bring that to the table too. And it's like, yes, you do. If you expect these things from your partner, what are you also willing to bring to the table? And what are you willing to compromise on? What are you willing to sacrifice? Because there will be moments where you'll have to make sacrifices, because when you're combining any two people's worlds and realities and personalities, there are going to be micro sacrifices that you'll have to make. And realizing whether that is a sacrifice that compromises my identity to the point that it's unhealthy because I'm having to give up a passion in order for the other person to be happy, versus it's just a sacrifice that it's like, you know what, it wasn't that important to me right now. And I want to prioritize the relationship first. So I don't mind changing that behavior. I don't mind giving that up. I don't mind growing in this way because it'll help me grow closer to my partner. So these are two very different things. My biggest suggestion would be that to take out this focus of, like you said, my ego needs these things to fulfill my sense of well-being and to fulfill my sense of desire. So to shift that focus from what am I bringing to the table, and then what are my core values, that once I align with those core values with that person, I will know, okay, we have this foundation where we agree on some extremely important things, right? Whether that's growth mentality, whether that's personal health and wellness, whether that's spirituality and faith, whether that is like our purpose here in life, like what's our core purpose. We align in some fundamentally important things so that when these little arguments or little disagreements or little micro sacrifices pop up, we're able to work and adapt and flex around that because we know that we align on the incredibly important fundamental things. So biggest suggestion would be just understanding, what am I bringing to the table? What are these core things that I'm truly just desiring and resonating with in another person? And in what ways can I continue to elevate my own presence, my own being, who I am, so that I can continue to connect with people in these extremely deep and profound ways and not in superficial ways? Because the more that I raise my standards for my communication and for who I am as a partner, the more that I connect with people who have higher standards too. And so as I stay on this shallow or more superficial or passion-based, lighthearted level, I'm going to connect with people who are on that same level. The deeper I go, the more I connect with people who are brave enough and willing to go deeper with me too.
I love that. I really, really love that answer. And I think what you said at the beginning of that answer is the difficulty of knowing what I bring to the table, because I call it the sort of measurable metrics and the hidden metrics. It's easy to measure how much money I have, or maybe how attractive she is or something. But emotional intelligence, compassion, kindness, that is hard to I don't know how to measure. And we need to really get to know each other to truly see that value. So even if a girl comes and says, hey, I can bring this, I don't think she's aware that she can bring that or she brings that. And when you ask a person, like, well, I just bring money, I bring status, it's like, okay, but what else? We are not consciously thinking of those things that are extremely valuable, but we cannot measure at all. So I understand, and I love that answer, because it gives people a lot to think about. It's okay, let me push the reset button and trying to understand myself better. How can I show up better, and trying to work on things that I'm looking for in a partner as well, because I have who am I to ask somebody for something if I'm not willing to show that as well?
Yeah.
Jessica, it's been a wonderful time. I love this conversation. We could have gone for even a longer time, but where can people find if they want to work with you, if they want to be coached by you, anything?
Yes, thank you so much. It's been wonderful for me as well. Thank you for inviting me to be here. And I am sparingly on social media, but I do have presences on there. It's on Instagram. It's at Jessica_compassion_coach. And I have a TikTok. I think it might be the same thing. Haven't been on there in a while. I think it's at Jessica_compassion_coach. And then also too on the website, I have my website, which is compassioncoaching.info. And that would be probably the main ways to reach out and to connect with me as well.
You also run some events in Austin.
I do. I run in-person workshops and events in Austin. And so if anyone is based in the Austin area, they could find the events that I do, which is how we met, actually, which these events are specifically to help people connect deeper, like we talked about, to take it from that superficial and just help people go deeper. And for those events, that would be possible to find on, I believe it's on, where did I put them? I think it's on my Instagram Linktree. Goodness, this shows you how much I go on my social media. It's on my Instagram Linktree, where when you click on the link in the bio, it connects to one of them, says check out my upcoming events or workshops. But also too, for the time being, working with the company that I work with, the person could go to skip the small talk, TALK, skipthesmalltalk.com, and then click events by city and click Austin, because I run the Austin chapter. So I host the events for them. Yeah,
those events are awesome. Great conversations. And hey, I went into a couple of them with no expectations, and hey, I thought it was going to be more awkward than it was. It was great. So I enjoyed that. Once again, Jessica, pleasure, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much.